Well, hello and welcome to episode number 386 of the Plain Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show we look at the world's greatest low-cost carriers. One airline makes their A320s idle, and Ryanair pop a cork. In the military this week, a Boeing 757 will be the testbed for the new Tempest fighter. The Luftwaffe unveils its new A321neo transport, and a US Navy training jet crashes near Dallas, Texas, and a B-2 bomber runs off the runway in Missouri. So, joining me this week here, I'm back. I'm back in the studio. Yay!
He's burping away. Honestly.
Sorry, that beer repeated on me again. Well, there's an intro still playing. There's for one.
Sorry about that. So it's all going very smoothly.
The background music is still firing away.
It's
there.
all right. It normally is.
Oh, is it? I don't know. Yeah. I could normally never hear it. Honestly. No. Anyway, I'll tell you what.
It's like you've never done the show before.
There's loads of room in here.
Going on right now? It's like we just teleported back to episode 200.
There's so much room in here. It's not even funny. And there's also a bag on the door. Sorry, I'm catching myself on the bag on the door.
It's going horribly wrong.
Who put a bag on the door?
Okay, I don't know. Anyway, just say hello to everyone. Will you?
Hello, everyone. And obviously Matt's here. You can hear him there, giggling in the background.
Yep.
And yes, it's nice to be in the refurbished studio. I will say it's nice to see everything still in one piece.
Yes.
Since I
yes,
left
indeed.
it.
Yeah.
And so joining us this week, another chap who done an awesome job last week, along with you, Matt, while I wasn't here. Uh-huh. And that is, of course, Neville Bands.
Kind of you to say. Thank you very much. And nice to be back this week. Lots on the show this week. Lots of interviews and stuff. But yeah, another hectic week for me. Bit of flying to Dublin and back.
Hello. And how was that?
Have you got
gold
points
Actually,
or something? You've
came back on an Aer Lingus A330.
Oh. Okay.
Which was very full as well. So I think what they're doing is probably trying to keep the crew current on that series of aircraft.
See. Right,
before they start doing US
before they're
Barbados and this sort of business.
Was it full, Nev? Or?
Just about, yeah. But because it takes nearly an hour to board it. That's the thing.
Oh,
right.
They start quite early.
What's
nice.
what's the Aer Lingus like to fly, Nev?
It's all right. Last time I flew them was 1986, which was a 737-400 from Shannon, I think it was, back to the UK. But no, it was all right. Yeah. Couldn't get my usual seat, obviously. So
excellent. No, it's good to see you, Nev. Nice to see you back. I will say again, well done on the show again last week, guys. I did listen to the show in its entirety this week whilst I was busy driving the mean streets of Suffolk and Norfolk, and it was a very enjoyable listen. I will say you've done very well.
Thank you.
You've done very well. So joining us this week, he's obviously back from Reno. He's got his goodie bags and free pens and free fridge magnets.
That's the only reason he went, obviously.
All the freebies I'm hoping that he got from the Reno Air Races. It is, of course, Armando.
Hey, guys. It is great to be back in person. Nev, I got to admit, I really enjoyed all the segments you've been doing. Really well done, sir. Kept me busy on all the flying that I've been doing.
Oh, thank you.
So did you get any free pens then from the Reno Air show? Because I mean, you go to these shows and like trade fairs and big things like this, and you normally end up getting free pens, T-shirts, and
every year you restock your wardrobe. You get rid of all the old shirts, and then you turn them into car washing rags and things like that, and then you restock with the new ones. So this is Sport 744, the slowest RV8 in the field. He's consistently lasts, and he's very proud of it. But he calls his airplane the Millennium Falcon. It's a nice, comfy shirt. Shout out to Tommy Ishii, number Sport 744 in Reno Air Races. He's such a good sport for being last always.
Oh, bless.
But hey, you know what? He's a Reno Air Race pilot. And you know what? We're not.
We're
not at Reno for one.
No, I can say there is that small detail, I suppose. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know what it's like where you are, Armando and Nev, because obviously you're on the other side of the UK. But me and Matt have experienced a fair amount of rain today, haven't we?
It's been a bit moist. I'll be honest. It's been a bit moist.
It's been very river filling uppy.
Yeah,
today.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. it's been a fun old day.
It's been a fun old day. So it is the beginning of the month.
Oh, is it?
And it's time to hand things over to Nev to do a certain few thank yous to some very, very, very special people who generously donate to the show. So Nev, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. Well, of course, it's as you say, the first of the month, which means it's our favourite time of the month to do some housekeeping, where we say thank you very much to our Patreon and PayPal donators. And this month, the Patreon donators are Sasha Beer, Stephen Ivey, Nicholas Codling, Warren Dixon, Louis Kasharis, Andrew van der Sarg, Alan White, Stephen Howland, Tanya Wyman, Megan Carrion, Jacob Darlington Brown, Nicholas Hewitt, Masha, Owen, Ruben Wells, Neil Landwarn, Graham Haley, Jonathan Warner, Eric Graves, Matt Caton, Jordan Rose, Andrew Wilson, Captain Jeff, Adam Spink, Liz Piper, Jeff Ward, Myla, Evan Shue, Philip Labe, Stuart Backer, Ray Williams and Stephanie Plummer. And those folks that have kindly donated by PayPal are Jennifer Parkinson, Craig Yuzuku, Mazuz Kareem, Tony Stubbings and Lee Davis. Thank you very much to you one and all. Your contributions this month have been very important indeed, and you'll be able to find out why that is a bit later on, I expect.
Yes, it's been very important to help with a few things in the studio, hasn't it, Matt?
Well, I mean, it's been a work in progress for a while, isn't it? So it's been nice to sort of get the worktop back in here, the proper one that we had rather than the table, and and I'm very much looking forward to the blind. This is all going.
Yes,
this is all going. Yes, absolutely.
We actually ordered this week a new blind to go next to where Matt's sitting there, and it's it should be a chroma green kind of.
Yes, absolutely.
To go with the green screen behind us here. So
and then there'll be another one going over the door at some point. But
yes.
Maybe next month.
But so a big thanks to everyone again, as Nev said, for your very kind donations this month. And don't forget, if you want to become a Patreon of the show and get a shout out each month, you can do via our website. The links are all on there. So... well, just going to say a big thanks as well and hello to everyone who's joined us in the live chat room this evening. And actually going to say a very big welcome to someone who's turned up in the chat room this evening. Great to see him back. And he's released a brand new episode of his podcast this week, him and Alex. So hello to Paul Papadimitriou on the chat room. Had a chat with Paul actually earlier this week, and he's in the midst of a busy house move. He's very busy indeed. But if you check out Paul and Alex over at the Layovers podcast, they have released a brand new episode, and I listened to that this week. Very enjoyable indeed. So hello to Lee Davies, who's in the chat room. We've got Neville Bounds, obviously wielding the blue spanner of doom.
Of course.
Captain Cruz, GB's Model Zone. We have got, just scrolling down, Armando's in there as well, also wielding a blue spanner of doom. Alex Robinson, hello to you, Alex. Mazuz Kareem, hello to you, Mazuz, hope you're well. Cream Tea, interesting name there, joining us this week. Richard Adams, hello to you. Cream Tea, I just fancy a cream tea right now. With a scone with jam. Nik Codling, hello to you. Matt C, hello to you, Matt C. I wonder if it's Matt Caton. That might be Matt Caton. I don't know. Captain Nick's also in there as well. So hello to you, Captain Nick. Tanya, hello to you, Tanya. And Captain Nick is obviously just checking up on things. He's also wielding a blue spanner of doom as well.
Is he? We're obviously a bit too liberal
with our blue spanners of doom.
We're just giving them away.
So don't forget, if you are tuning into us via the audio podcast and you want to find out what all the craziness is about on the YouTube feed, don't forget to take yourselves over to YouTube, search for Plain Talking UK, and click on that subscribe button and also the bell icon, and make sure you click that, which is right next door, to be pinged on your phone or your tablet when we are live and recording new episodes, because we would love to have you in the chat room. So there we go. Well, we've got loads to get through, loads of commercial news. So if all the team is... It's lovely to have all the team back. If all the team is ready, let's go.
We are. starting off with the commercial news on onemileatatime.com and aerotime.aero. It says that British Airways 777 pilots are wanted in Doha. British Airways and Qatar Airways are working together on a unique opportunity for pilots this winter. Up to 40 British Airways Boeing 777 pilots could be headed to Doha to fly Qatar Airways Boeing 777s. British Airways pilots have reportedly received a memo with a secondment offer. Several aviation media outlets have reported. Up to 40 pilots are wanted for this opportunity, split evenly between captains and first officers. This opportunity is limited to 6 months, and an extension beyond that would be based on the mutual agreement of all parties. Training would commence in October and November, and pilots would start flying with Qatar Airways shortly after that. Pilots who take advantage of this would be based in Doha for the duration of the agreement and would remain employed and paid by British Airways, although they'd be paid based on the amount of flying they do. Discussions between the two airlines are reported still to be at an early stage, and BA warns that there are significant complexities involved that could prevent the secondments from going ahead. Qatar Airways has 83 Boeing 777s in its fleet, including 26 freighters, and BA has 59, 11 of which are currently parked. British Airways and Qatar Airways are related through BA's parent International Airlines Group, IAG, and the Gulf-based air carrier is the single largest shareholder of IAG since 2016 and owns 25.1% of IAG since February 2020. This wouldn't be the first time the two airlines have worked together in this way. Back in 2017, when BA was having labour issues, Qatar Airways based 8 A320s in London so that it could be wet leased to British Airways. So if you fly on a Qatar Airways Boeing 777 this winter, you might hear the captain announce, "Welcome aboard Qatar Airways." Now, I wonder if the negotiations are to do with tax-free pay, perhaps, and things like that. That might be something to do with it, mightn't it? So
it just seems. I presume. They're obviously all owned by IAG, aren't they? I presume that's
yes, but I'm sure that there is, local government and local employment laws and all the rest of it in place there. So it'll be interesting to see. But we'll keep an eye on this story because I think it could be quite interesting.
I think so. Yeah. Is it? This is different to a code share, isn't it? Sorry, you'll have to excuse my naivety
here. Yeah, well, actually,
here,
what's happened here is that what they've got, and in fact, this is different to how it was when the Qatar Airways was running the A320s into London, because that was a fully wet leased operation, so that was aircraft and crew, whereas this is BA pilots flying Qatar equipment.
Wow.
So that's interesting, I have to say.
I guess presumably they are, they're the same. If you get into one A330 or A320, I guess they're all the same.
There'll be differences between them depending on which versions have been ordered, I would imagine. That is why they've got to go through some differences training, I would imagine. So,
and it's not only that. Companies also have different operations specifications and different checklist items and different operations manuals. But in an effort to keep us above 50%, producer John actually says that Qatar actually owns part of IAG, not the other way around.
Oh.
Am I right in thinking, Nev, that wages, people paid wages for jobs in UAE don't pay tax?
Well, there's different tax laws in the Middle East compared to the UK and Europe. So I don't know what the score is going to be with licensing and that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see, won't it?
I'm sure somebody's got it in hand.
Yeah, this gentleman Pip in the chat room has a good point, which is he's interested in how they get around licensing issues, as in a UK CAA licensed pilot jumping in and flying on a foreign carrier.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so I think whatever this offer is to British Airways pilots, there's probably it's probably not a go back and forth type thing. It's
literally a sort of semi-permanent or or agreed
so.
term of secondment to, rather than sort of today I'm in this aircraft and tomorrow I'm flying for BA, and then in a week's time I'll be back in a Qatar. You know, I think it must be
Qatar.
Qatar, whatever. Yeah,
Qatar.
Yeah.
I would anticipate it's almost a semi-permanent type thing, if not permanent.
Wow.
So, Armando, you've got story 2, and it involves an aircraft that not only does Matt love, but is also one of my favourite commercial airliners.
Yeah, so we're trying something a little bit new this week, and in aviation, we always say anything that's dumb, different, or dangerous should be pointed out. I don't know, what you guys, the chat room, you guys, the listeners, can tell us at the end of the show which category this falls into, whether it was dumb, different, or dangerous. But our first military story, Matt's favorite airplane, the 757-200. So this the company Leonardo, which we all know, and a second aviation services company called 2XL, they're modifying this Boeing 757-200 airliner to act as a flying laboratory. So you guys love to come up with some pretty cool names. I feel like it's aviation meets Game of Thrones. So this airplane's called Excalibur.
You don't want a cold one.
And
ignore him. Sorry.
I know, right?
Sorry.
Like,
I'm very sorry.
Are we still live?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I was just offering Matt a drink because he had a little cough.
Carlos forgot that we have microphones in front of us, basically.
No, you know what Carlos is doing is actually representing the 64% of people that aren't interested in the military. Therefore, they're going to the fridge right now. They're going to the restroom. They're going to go walk the dog for the next 4.5 minutes while we read this story.
Quick, switch cameras to Nev.
Apologise to Armando immediately.
I find the military interesting, so thank you.
He says talking all the way through it. Okay, right. Anyway, carry on.
Anyway, this Excalibur, which is the 757-200, is going to be testing technology for the Tempest fighter jet, which is being developed by the international team, Tempest, I think that's what they're calling themselves now, for the RAF and the Italian Air Force. So this Tempest is all being digitally designed, but the technology that goes into it will sooner or later need to be tested in the real world before it ever gets to the test aircraft. So obviously named after the legendary sword of King Arthur, which is exactly what a 757 looks like. This Excalibur will provide that real-world flight training environment or flight environment for this next generation aircraft. I can see that we're just going to move along with the military. So
No, carry on.
No, seriously, this is something that's been done quite a bit. We've seen some Frankenstein-type airplanes between the 747s, the 757. There's Raytheon has that catfish-looking one that they use for testing avionics. The U.S. Air Force has a bunch of funky-looking 757s also that they use for their testing. I think I just saw the latest generation F-16 radar and nose cone is being tested on Raytheon's 757-200. So it's been done before. I'm sure Boeing is just kind of pulling this design off the old shelf and doing this for the Tempest program. But there you go. So Matt, you are not going to see 757s stop flying anytime soon, and they're just going to get cooler looking.
Actually,
I do love that. I do love that picture. Actually, I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw that.
Awesome. I was just going to say,
I love the paint
so
job
cool.
on that. Yeah,
and the nose cone and the winglets and that. Most of 75s in the commercial ones have the winglets now. But I was just looking up, Armando, where they're acquiring this 75 from. And it's coming from TUI.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, TUI. It's an X-TUI 75. So
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lee Davies, in the chat room. He said he's still interested in the military.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah. This is. I should explain. I just started having a coughing
bit of
fit.
a cough.
So I turned all the microphones off, and he missed the signal when I said they were back live again. Basically, he was trying to offer me a drink because I was having a coughing fit.
Yeah,
so
trying to save
in his
him.
defence,
trying to save the poor man.
Absolutely. Okay, I think you're next.
Yeah, story number 3. This is from the mirror.co.uk and worldairlineawards.com. And it's what we've all been waiting to hear, isn't it? The world's best budget airlines in 2021 have been ranked.
Oh,
my
right.
word.
Okay.
So EasyJet, Ryanair and Jet2.com have been named some of the world's best low-cost airlines in a new top 20 rankings. AirAsia trumped in the top spot, but the 3 UK airlines fared well. EasyJet was 6th, Ryanair 8th and Jet2 15th. The rankings were revealed in the Skytrax Awards for 2021, which included a category for budget airlines. The research covered over 350 airlines and looked at factors including customer service, something we all know Ryanair is great at, cabin seat comfort, cabin cleanliness, food quality, and the check-in process, to name but a few. Being in the world's top 20 wasn't the only accolade awarded to EasyJet as well as coming second in Europe's best budget rankings. It was also named the UK's best low-cost airline. Ooh. So we've got a few. We've got a few top 20s and a top 5 here.
Okay.
These.
All right. Okay.
We'll start with.
Hang on. Here we go. Hang on. You know the rules.
I know. This is the top 10 best low-cost airlines in Europe. So
in 10.
At number 10, it's one I've never heard of before. It's Pobeda.
Right. Okay. Armando, number 9.
Level?
Okay.
I've never heard of that one.
Number 8, please.
It's Air Baltic. Good airline, that.
Ooh. At number 7, it's everyone's favourite purple carrier. It's Wizz Air.
We mentioned them just a moment ago. In at number 6, it's Jet2. No, we didn't. We were talking about TUI. Never mind me. I was listening.
Number 5, Armando.
Number 5 is actually still one of my favorite airlines, and they're still hanging in there. That's Norwegian.
Wow. And number 4, please, Nev.
It's Eurowings from Germany.
Okay, I'm going to say number 3 just because it's always... Number 3, it's Ryanair.
At number 2, it's the awesome orange EasyJet.
And finally, at number 1, Armando.
That is Vueling Airlines.
Now, what? I don't know. Where's Vueling?
Vueling is
it must be
European,
Europe, obviously, okay.
So now this is the top 20 of the world's top 20 best low-cost airlines. So in at number 20...
Okay. It's Wizz Air. Number 19, Armando.
Air Arabia.
Oh, 18, Nev.
Spring Airlines.
Huh?
Spring Airline, right, okay, no idea. Carlos, number 17.
Jet Smart.
And at number 16, it's SpiceJet. 15, Armando.
Once again, Jet2.
Very cool. Number 14, Nev.
Air Canada Rouge.
What? Now, hang on. I have to ask a question. What's Air Canada Rouge?
It's like the cheap version of
Is it just
Air
literally the Air?
It's, I think it's a bit of an Air Canada light.
Okay, right. Yes, fair enough. And at number 13, please, Carlos.
It is Norwegian.
Very good. Number 12, Armando.
Flown this quite a bit, actually. Eurowings.
Okay, right. Where about? I mean, presumably in Europe.
For me, it was always Stansted to Stuttgart, and I did that about 500 times.
Oh,
well, maybe not.
Wow, okay.
Quite a
Nev
bit.
Nev loves his fruit. So what's this next one, Nev?
Yes, number 11 is Pytch. Quite peachy, actually.
And at number 10, it's Flyness. No, is that not how it's said?
Well, I don't know. It's like Flynas or something.
Flynas, okay, all right.
At number 9, it's Jetstar Asia.
Oh, okay, cool. And number 8, please, Nev.
Number 8 is Ryanair.
Very good. Number 7, Armando.
I'm going to assume this is not Asia, but Jetstar Airways. Ooh. They're non-Asian directorate.
Right. And at number 5, he says missing out number 6.
It's number 6. Number 6, it was EasyJet.
We're just skipping over number 6.
I flew with them a couple of weeks ago.
Nev, who's in at number 5?
Number 5 is Indigo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do I know that name?
I don't know. I've never heard.
We talk about him a lot.
Okay. And number 4.
Once again, Vueling Airlines, which, thank you, Captain Cruz, who should be on the production staff, is out of Spain. So,
very good. Okay.
And at number 3, it's the airline you use if you're in a hurry. It's Scoot.
Oh, dear. Right, okay. And number 2, please, Nev.
Yes, Southwest Airlines, not surprisingly.
And finally, at number 1, please, Armando.
That is Air Asia.
Okay. Has anybody flown with
Not with
AirAsia?
AirAsia, no.
Nope.
No.
Does anybody agree?
I love that this is an aviation podcast, and there's about a third of these that we're all scratching our head going.
Yeah.
And this is a quick top 5 then. Now this one is the world's best long haul low cost airlines of 2021.
Should I mean, is that just the 5 only long haul?
It must be the 5 only ones. So in at number 5 it's AirAsia X.
Right, okay. Number 4, please, Nev.
Level, but not level 42. Just level.
Okay.
Oh, they were
By the way,
banned, weren't they?
Captain Cruz tells us that Level is out of Portugal. So
That's
Very
right.
good.
And
Yeah.
now we know.
Sign him up to the
Armando,
team quickly. Yes.
Who's in at number 3?
number 3 is Air Canada Rouge again.
Okay.
Number 2 it's Jetstar Airways.
Lovely, very good, and finally at number 1, it is Scoot. I keep saying, sorry, I just
Right,
I keep saying the word Scoot, and I have Scat Airways going back in my head. I'm sorry about
Don't
that.
start. Anyway,
No, too much.
2 things. One for me
Well-
is how the hell did Vueling beat EasyJet? Don't know. And second one, how did AirAsia beat Southwest?
My point of contention is the same as Micah's in the chat room, which is Southwest started as a low-cost airline. Are they a low-cost airline still? I don't know. They're about the same as everybody else now.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. That's an interesting.
But I guess it's
stat.
on their posters. So
It
Right.
just goes to show though that if you
Yeah, but by that definition, you could make BA a low-cost airline. If it was
they tried to do a low cost airline.
American Airlines is also low cost if
Yeah.
you buy the ticket 6 months ahead of time from like I don't even know,
Bob down the
Lexington,
road.
Kentucky
Yeah.
to Charleston, West Virginia. That's also low cost.
If it's on the poster, it must be true, Nev.
Has this become a pedantic podcast?
Sorry, my bad. Okay, moving on. Okay,
Anyway.
there's no fair point, yes.
Moving on to the next story.
This is why we need Nev, you see. It's the voice
I
of reason.
know.
This is it.
Nev's like the overseer.
Yes,
I think,
quite.
yeah.
The overlord. if you will.
Overlord, yes.
Absolutely.
So Matt, you've got a military story next. All
Have
about the Luftwaffe's new A321neo.
Right, okay, and somebody didn't think about the fact that I've got to do that and put pictures up. But anyway,
Oh,
there we go.
well, I can
So
read if you want.
there we go. So the headline is Luftwaffe's first A321neo is unveiled. So Germany ordered 2 aircraft of the long-range version of the Airbus jet for troop transport and medical evacuation. The Luftwaffe last week unveiled the first Airbus A321neo, which will be received in 2022. The aircraft is part of an order for 2 jets of the long-range version and will be used for troop transport and medical evacuation. The contract was signed with Lufthansa Technik, which will adapt the 2 planes to carry out various missions in the midst of 18 planned configurations. The Luftwaffe A321neo will be available to carry up to 163 passengers or adapted to accommodate 6 intensive care patients or 12 with mild and moderate illnesses. It's also possible to convert the aircraft to mixed configurations. The 2 A321 long-range aircraft were acquired in July of last year and delivered by Airbus to Lufthansa Technik in August and October without the interior configured. So presumably by that definition, they're doing the interior themselves. Then is that what?
It's likely, yeah. It's likely that there's a defense contractor that's going to do the interior, especially because the A321neo is, pretty similar size to that 757, and their ability to get into some smaller airfields that they may not be able to get into with the 330.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's probably going to have. So I'll save you, Matt. But it's going to have a medical configuration, and that will likely have additional not aviators oxygen but medical oxygen on there with some surgical lights, probably some surgical tables, additional power requirements to power some of that medical equipment, ventilators, things like that. So so it's probably going to be a pretty unique interior that the Luftwaffe has a third party defense contractor to do the work for.
They all look so dull in grey, don't they?
That's quite good in grey.
Oh, do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah,
But if you ding it, it's easier to touch it up if it's all one
right.
colour.
If it's all the same, right? Yeah, okay. There is that.
Won't it be funny, like 20 years from now, when really we realize that everything was painted gray just because it was the cheapest color?
Right.
True. Something like that. Had no tactical or strategic considerations whatsoever. It just happened to be just the cheapest one.
The cheapest paint they could buy. Yeah. Anyway, the story finishes. The schedule foresees the delivery of both in the first quarter of 2022. The long-range version of the A321neo is 20% more economical, which translates into a 900-kilometre longer range. The German government justified the purchase of the aircraft last year because of transport needs arising during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a paragraph that sort of surprised me a bit. Really, was there? I must admit, I hadn't really thought of the need for military, not military, sorry, medical. Maneuvers, if you like, in pandemic times.
Yeah, absolutely. As we kill the top 10 music, if you guys remember, we did a couple different stories. There was a story on a roll-on capability that was almost an isolation chamber. In the initial days of COVID, we talked about that. I think it was either on a C-130. No, it was on a jet. It was on a 747 or something like that. And I believe that capability evolved into transporting critical passengers as well as highly contagious passengers, not just for COVID, but COVID highlighted some capability gaps. So I think now for the future, they're probably going to try to have this capability as part of a new aircraft too. But and then as you guys know, I mean, initially we were transporting people all over the world. Back home, repatriating people that were stuck overseas.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
you remember that we did a couple stories about that. Where at the end of the day, it was the individual countries' military.
Of course,
that flew out there.
So it wasn't. So it wasn't necessarily its medical. Sorry, I was assuming that its configuration, if you like, was with the medical requirements. If you've seen, but actually, no. The passenger variant is more what would have been more useful, obviously, during said pandemic.
Which is exactly what this airplane is for. It's a multi-role where you can configure it for a combination passenger, combination medical transport. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah. I was watching a documentary series last week about the refitting or the outfitting of the new Air Force One over in the US, and they're actually on the Air Force One. They're going to have an actual operational theatre for doing operations. Actual medical operations in.
Oh, wow.
They're having an actual proper bed with all the overhead light, everything so they can actually perform complex operations on people.
Yeah, if you guys remember, there was the Orbis Flying Hospital, the DC-8.
Yeah.
Yep, they have a similar thing where
where was that? Somebody went to it.
Yeah, that's me.
That was
I think it was at Oshkosh.
Yeah.
I think it's made it over to Europe a couple times for Farnborough, not recently, but they try to make their rounds to the big air shows, the Paris Air Show, things like that. But that is just one example. There's many of those. Maybe not many, but there's quite a few of those medical transport aircraft that have the ability to do up to open heart surgery on an aircraft.
Wow. Gosh, you wouldn't want any turbulence during that particular manoeuvre, would you?
I got the wrong end of the stick there. When you said it was an operational theatre, I thought we were going to put on a play or something.
Put on Les Mis mid-air.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Taking the new version of IFE back analog, right?
Go back to basics. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a bad
I
idea.
like.
Well, of course, up in first class in British Airways, Nev's going to have like some Shakespeare play.
Of course, absolutely.
And we're just going to get the...
Obviously, I would be in the royal box.
Of course, absolutely, the equivalent thereof, and then the rest of us in cattle class will be watching. I don't know, Mamma Mia or something like that.
Give you some
Minecraft.
Yeah, give us some binoculars. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Nev, you've got the next story, and I just hope this guy wasn't using Gorilla Glue.
No, indeed. This has come from a number of different sources. Simpleflying.com, from the BBC, Sky, and My London News, and thestandard.co.uk. It says the man who spectacularly glued himself to the top of a British Airways Embraer aircraft 2 years ago has been jailed for 1 year. The court at Southwark Crown Court deliberated for less than an hour before handing down the sentence, noting that his actions disrupted more than 300 passengers and cost British Airways in the region of £40,000.
My gosh.
The jury heard that Brown had booked his flight. There's a fellow called James Brown, actually, yes. James Brown had booked his flight on October the 10th, 2019, which was the morning of the stunt. He'd been offered assistance with boarding due to his visual impairment. Brown wedged his phone in the door so that it wouldn't close and proceeded to use a bottle of super glue he had secreted into his luggage to glue his right hand to the aircraft. The former athlete remained on top of the aircraft, which necessitated a team of specially trained protest removal officers to be called. They, along with the London Fire Brigade, then succeeded in removing him from the roof after more than an hour. Brown, who represented himself at the trial, denied one count of causing a public nuisance, claiming he had to do something spectacular to draw attention to the climate crisis. Judge Perrin said the right to protest does not entitle you to cause major widespread disruption to a major airport simply because you think it's the right thing to do. A team of specially trained protest removal officers was called, and along with the London Fire Brigade, they succeeded in removing him from the roof. Brown was part of a wider protest by the activist group Extinction Rebellion, who held many protests shutting down the airport that day. Another member prevented an Aer Lingus aircraft taking off by standing in the aisle and lecturing the passengers on climate change as the aircraft taxied towards the runway. The protester was offloaded, but ironically the flight required to be refuelled due to the delay. James Brown was sentenced to 1 year in prison, of which it is suspected he will serve approximately half. Extinction Rebellion organisers have vowed to hold a vigil outside Wandsworth Prison every day until activist Brown is released. During sentencing, the judge issued a warning to other activists keen to get involved in the disruptive protests. He said, "You are not entitled to a more lenient treatment simply because you are protesting about environmental matters as opposed to some other cause. Everyone in this country has the right to protest, and there are many ways in which that can be done without breaking the law." My only regret about reading this story is that the sentence wasn't long enough.
Yeah, I mean, in the interests of balance, I should just say that John has put an awful lot of work into offering some details about the individual who was involved in this, and I should just stress at the bottom. He says, of which, in my opinion, is utterly irrelevant to the story, but the media seem to be making a big thing of it. He's a gold medalist, represented Team GB in the Winter Games, etc., etc., etc. I mean,
now he's got a criminal record, doesn't he? So
he has.
He's spoilt all of that.
Well, yeah, I just don't understand what.
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Yeah,
I bet he doesn't feel good.
Do you know, we need a Nev, if you could add into your wonderful list of sound effects, perhaps like a sort of some wind and some tumbleweed, something like that.
Yes,
I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
I wonder when
ideally for by the end of the show, I think at this rate.
I wonder if when the police turned up, they said, "Get up off of that thing."
Okay, I think I think enough of that now, if I'm honest. But
I'll leave the chat.
I guess really. This is I get, you know, the cause is not my issue here, and there must be ways of I don't know. It's like that. I'm sorry. I'm really struggling to find the words here because.
Do you want a beer?
Yeah, the bit that with that'll help. The bit. I don't know how much many I know because a lot of our listeners are obviously not here in the UK, and we've had a lot of problems with people putting sort of essentially doing similar stunts by supergluing themselves to motorways and things like that here in the region, especially around
M25.
London and sort of Nev's sort of neck of the woods. I mean, it's just like. Oh, I don't know. I don't know how I can. I just find the whole thing very, very frustrating.
What you mean is, Matt, there are better ways of making a point.
I think so.
Or making your point.
I don't think all avenues of communication have been exhausted at this stage to warrant these things. I mean, if nothing else, I mean, what he did essentially, although the other, very, very dangerous is what I was gonna say, but also the paragraph there that you read, Nev, the fact that the vehicle, the aircraft then had to be refueled, I found slightly fascinating.
Yes, I don't know why that was the case, because it had not gone anywhere.
Unless unless the APU was running for a long period of time, maybe, or because they will have been passengers. Oh, I suppose there will have been passengers on board, wouldn't there?
Yes, so perhaps
because
the APU
they were boarding.
was running for all that time, and therefore, perhaps they were there for quite a long time. So
yes.
yeah, right.
Mind you, I suppose you could have unboard. What's the correct word? Not unboarded. Deplaned. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. I'm not doing very well tonight.
Well, unboarded would have been though.
Right, I'm going to stop talking, I think.
So Armando, story number 6, and a slight accident, but I'm glad it's got a relatively good outcome.
Yeah, taking it back to the military. This is now about 11 days old, but because I wasn't here, I still wanted, had bookmarked it and wanted to talk about it. So this military jet that crashed in just outside of Dallas, it's Lake Worth, is a neighborhood there. These 2 pilots were hospitalized. 3 people were treated for minor injuries after this jet crashed into this neighborhood. Now, this was on the 19th of September, I believe. Both pilots ended up ejecting. One was taken in critical condition by Care Flight, which is a medical transport, to Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, and an ambulance took the other one to another hospital in Fort Worth, according to the fire department. So this happened about 10:53 in the morning on that Sunday. Around Lake Worth, the student pilot was, and I've actually seen an update just in the past day about this. The student pilot is actually still in serious condition, and he is still receiving treatments for his injuries. He's going to end up staying in the hospital because he suffered burns when he hit some power lines under the parachute. There were some high tension power lines. Now, this jet was assigned to Training Air Wing 2 at Naval Air Station Kingsville. It was conducting, as they always say, a routine training flight from Corpus Christi. That's according to the Chief of Naval Air Training's office. The cause of the crash had not been determined quite yet, and the safety team at the time of this writing was on its way to assess the damage. This plane came down about 1 mile north of Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base, Fort Worth, or what used to be known as Carswell Air Force Base. 3 houses were damaged when the plane crashed into the backyards. 3 residents from the houses were treated for minor injuries and then released. One pilot was found in the power lines with his parachute. The other pilot was found in a nearby neighborhood. Now, this neighborhood had actually been designated by the military as, quote, accident potential zone, which is an area where an accident could occur based on its approach or departure from the military base. 2 off-duty Fort Worth firefighters ran to help these pilots, and then a couple of the neighbors that chipped in. And in the update that we found just in the last day or so, the team from the Navy's on-scene coordination group actually removed all the hazardous material. They went out and removed some of the soil from the backyards of the houses where the aircraft crashed, and they actually, believe it or not, they actually brought in some clean soil to replace that. That contaminated soil. And it was a T-45 jet. There you go. So the instructor was released. The student pilot is still recovering from those burns. So our thoughts are obviously with the U.S. Navy and the Second Air Training.
Absolutely. It's
Do you think, Armando, it's something to do with obviously training? I know these guys obviously train to within an inch of what they do, but because things have been so quiet lately, there's obviously been less flying, I'd imagine, for pretty much everyone, not just commercial, but military pilots as well.
Yeah, during the height of the pandemic, military training flights took a little bit of a hit. I think there were quite a few articles about proficiency versus currency, how air crews were keeping currency, but not necessarily proficient at their missions. The whole world just kind of slowed down a little bit. I think by now it's kind of started ramping back up. Most of the military, I would guess, in the 90%-ish is vaccinated. They're the government has a great way to test out safety protocols, and often the military is some of the first to experience some of those protocols that you may see proliferated out to the community. We're basically guinea pigs, but people, wherever you stand on vaccines, I got my vaccines and I was like, COVID, okay, bring it, because they shot me up with anthrax about 10 years ago. So,
oh, blimey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Forgive my note. Sorry, this is completely apropos of nothing. Was there any particular reason for that, or was it just to build an immunity?
At the time, anthrax was a biological weapon that was and it still is a viable biological weapon and used by both state and non-state actors. So most military people in most countries actually get vaccinated for either a specific region that you may operate in.
Right.
So that's not just the diseases of yellow fever or
it's the other stuff that goes right.
Tuberculosis stuff, but you actually, anything that could be a biological weapon, you get vaccinated against if there is a vaccine for it. So in our case, anthrax was one of those.
I want that pumped in me.
So.
Gosh, I mean, and I'm complaining because I felt a little bit poorly when I had my COVID thing. I can't imagine what that must have been like.
Well, and our parents' generation had smallpox, right? You guys had smallpox.
Yeah, true.
Vaccines.
True.
That's not exactly
okay.
a fun vaccine. But.
No, fair point. Yep. Okay.
So, Matt,
yep.
Your next story is we're going to one of your favourite areas of the world.
We are, absolutely. So it's not story 2. However, it is a Ryanair story, and the headline is Ryanair returns to Cork, Irish base to reopen in December. So this comes from Simple Flying and corkairport.com. After closing its Cork base in October 2020, Ryanair has confirmed that it will reopen with 2 based 737-800s from December the 1st. Some 12 routes will operate from Cork this summer, rising to 20 next summer. 2 routes previously operated by Aer Lingus Regional are coming, continuing the theme of Ryanair launching ex-Flybe and ex-Stobart Air routes to the UK. Ryanair reopening its Cork base follows Cork Airport, operated by the Dublin Airport Authority, agreeing to extend the pandemic recovery scheme to the end of October 2022. This raises the obvious question of what will happen in winter 2022. According to Cork Airport Recovery Scheme documents, a 2-aircraft base will mean Ryanair is entitled to €300,000 as a one-off credit. This assumes the base is operational before December 31st and that each based aircraft has a minimum frequency of 14 weekly rotations, that's round trips. Curiously, the document also says that the scheduled timings proposed and operated must be pre-approved by Cork Airport Operations, although this could be a simple tick box exercise as the scheme has been extended from the end of March to October 2022. A greater incentive has likely been offered, as Cork Airport's Managing Director Niall McCarthy said. Ryanair is a long-standing business partner of Cork Airport. They are demanding their right they are demanding their right to be demanding, but we are delighted to be here today to announce the reopening of the base. In the first week of December, Ryanair will have 12 routes from Cork with 53 weekly departures in all, according to flights available for booking, though as usual with Ryanair bases, not all flights will use Cork-based aircraft. It'll have 91% of the flights it had in the same week in 2019. Looking ahead to the first week of August, Ryanair will have 20 routes and 76 weekly outbound flights. In the same period in 2019, the ultra low-cost carrier had 22 routes from Cork and 85 outbound flights a week. Now, I must say, I mean, I don't know whether, I don't know what, cause you was, Nev, you were saying, because you were with Aer Lingus, obviously, this week, where you've been flying about. I mean, I went to Belfast with EasyJet the previous week, and I must say, certainly in my experience, both flights were absolutely rammed.
Yes, and that happened on the flight out to Dublin with BA as well, because there's only I think 2 or 3 a day at the moment. So until they get the frequency back up, they're going to be jamming lots of folks onto the flights, just like it used to be.
Yeah.
Because they need to get some money back. They can't fly around with half-empty aircraft
No,
at the moment.
indeed.
The fares aren't that expensive. But, so I think we're going to see a bit more of that. But I think they do need to lay a few more flights on because it's getting a bit jammed. But, of course, Cork is going through a big refurbishment at the moment. I think it's closed currently.
Okay.
It will be soon, and they're going through a huge refurbishment, but it'll be good because in that part of the country there's not very much connectivity apart from Shannon and a few of the other smaller regional airports.
Wow. Okay.
No, it should be good. Yeah, please
Indeed. But I mean, certainly my experience of like flying. Well, I mean, I suppose yours wasn't quite within the UK, obviously, because you went into Dublin, didn't you?
Yeah.
As I say, I went into Belfast, but I mean, it certainly felt like there was an element of normality. And although, for example, in my case, Stansted wasn't as busy as it probably would ordinarily have been, say at around about 10 o'clock, which is when I was coming through Stansted's departure lounge, it was pretty busy. I mean, I think there is definitely signs of recovery, isn't there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. And T5 at Heathrow is very busy indeed. So
is it?
Yeah, it's not quite back to full on, but I think once we start seeing some of the because obviously the PCR testing is being scrapped from next week, actually, isn't it?
Okay.
In many cases, so that will help on the European sectors, and then of course from November onwards, there's the prospect of a bit of US flying as well.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Is long overdue.
Super exciting.
Yeah.
It really is.
According to Captain Nick in the chat room, apparently he prefers old-fashioned aluminium-based aircraft, not cork ones.
Right. Okay. I can see why that would be of interest to him. Certainly.
I guess it makes ditching better, though.
Yeah. It's not,
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. It's not too
True that.
I don't know about the pressurisation part of things, but anyway,
A bit leaky.
bit
one might
leaky.
suggest,
Yes. I'll just put a cork in it. Anyway, this comes to us.
Nev, I
from...
need seriously the tumbleweed.
This comes to us. This military story comes to us from the AirForceTimes.com, and B-2 bomber crashes in Missouri. Oh my God, Jonathan Warner's going to be gutted after in-flight malfunction, but none injured. So a B-2 Spirit bomber crashed on the runway at Wildman Air Force Base in Missouri after the aircraft malfunctioned during a routine training flight in the middle of the night on Tuesday. The Air Force has confirmed the stealth bomber was damaged in the emergency landing at around 12:30 a.m. on the 14th of September. The extent of the damage has not been disclosed. No one was injured in the crash, and there was no fire on board, Air Force Global Strike Command spokesperson Jennifer Green said on September the 15th. Two airmen, a pilot and a mission commander can ride in the B-2, and Green did not answer how many people were inside the bomber by press time. The Air Force's fleet of 20 Spirit bombers can fire both conventional and nuclear weapons in combat, but it was not carrying weapons when it crashed, she said. Green declined to answer other questions about the incident, such as what the in-flight incident or malfunction was, as the Air Force investigates the mishap. The War Zone reported Wednesday the B-2 may have experienced a hydraulic failure in flight, and its port main landing gear collapsed during the landing, sending it off the runway with its wing digging into the ground. Satellite imagery provided to Air Force Times by Planet Labs showed the bomber resting on the grass next to the paved area. The Federal Aviation Administration issued a notice banning aircraft from flying within 6 miles of Wildman between September the 14th to the 17th to provide a safe environment for investigation, citing hazards in the area. B-2 mishaps are rare. The most recent recorded incident was in fiscal 2015, according to the Air Force Safety Center, preceded by a fire that heavily damaged one bomber in 2010, and one B-2 was destroyed in a crash upon takeoff in Guam in 2008. Wildman has served as the only B-2 home base since the 1990s. Each airframe costs a cool $1.2 billion as they entered regular operations in 1998, according to the Air Force. And the service plans to retire the fleet in the next 10 years to make way for the more advanced B-21 Raider, which is now in production. So how far is Wildman from you, Armando?
Oh, it's in the middle of the country. It's in Knobnoster, Missouri. If you've ever been out there, you were probably lost.
Oh.
It's far. It's in the middle of the country.
It's a few miles away then. It's a bit like how far we are away from everyone, Matt, living here.
Everyone in general, yeah.
Everyone in general, exactly, yeah.
Yes, Knobnoster, Missouri is the Bungie of America.
There we go. Sums that up.
I'm sure they'll be delighted with
sentence.
that comparison. Yeah.
So, Nev, you've got commercial news story 9 here.
Yes, this is on the flightglobal.com website, AV Herald, and on the caa.co.za in South Africa. It says that South African investigators have disclosed that a Semair Bombardier CRJ-200 crew departed from George Airport before the control tower opened, despite being aware of an inbound Airlink Embraer ERJ-135 on approach to the same runway from the opposite direction. Preliminary inquiries into the 23rd of August incident, classified as a serious incident by the South African CAA, have found that the airport's tower and approach control centres opened at different times, 15 minutes apart. The rationale as to why these two stations opened at different times could not be determined with certainty, but posed a serious safety implication on the operations at the aerodrome, the inquiry states, pointing out that the outbound Semair service to Johannesburg and the inbound Airlink flight from Cape Town were scheduled to be operating at George around the same time. According to the inquiry, the departing CRJ-200 crew were well aware of NOTAM information listing the different tower and approach opening times. As the CRJ-200, with 38 passengers and 3 crew, their call sign was Semair 125, scheduled for departure at 05:45 Zulu, taxied for runway 29. Its crew were called by approach control and informed that the tower frequency will be opening within 2 minutes at 05:45 Zulu, and that there was an aircraft inbound for the opposite direction, runway 11, within the next 7 minutes. The KEM 125 crew requested runway 29, but were informed that as the tower was closed, their request could not be accommodated. Approach informed the aircraft to hold position at the Alpha 3 holding point, but despite being informed to hold position by approach control, the CRJ's captain replied that the flight was ready for an immediate departure and would follow the unmanned procedure to take off from runway 29 and turn left over the sea. The captain broadcast an advisory of this departure over the approach frequency. At 05:44 and 58 seconds, the tower now occupied the radio that they were in service, and for any aircraft on frequency to acknowledge that at the time KEM 125 was still on the runway. At 05:45 and 35 seconds Zulu, the crew radioed that they were now rolling for takeoff. The Semair crew did not wait for the tower to open, even after they were informed by approach control of the situation with the Airlink flight, says the inquiry. After learning that the Semair aircraft was rolling for takeoff about the same time as the tower opened, approach controllers told the Airlink flight to stop its descent at 8,000 feet and turned the aircraft to the south off its approach path, instructing it to descend whilst the Semair jet climbed away. The Airlink crew was then cleared to realign for a visual approach to runway 11. Investigators have yet to reach formal conclusions on the incident, but none of the 41 occupants on board the CRJ-200 or the 31 on the ERJ-135 was injured. Well, of course they weren't injured because nothing happened. But so okay. a bit of misunderstanding possibly.
Can I jump in and go a little bit technical?
Yeah, please do.
All right. So this is a totally normal operation that happens all the time, and whether you like it or not, it's completely legal. Now I don't know about the aviation regulations in South Africa, but here in the United States, whether you're a private pilot or a charter operation or even a 135, so a commuter style operation, you are allowed to take off VFR from an uncontrolled field. And in fact, many even regionals airlines sometimes go into uncontrolled airfields and have these procedures. Now, the other aircraft that was coming in, So I take issue with a couple of these things. One, they if it's a regularly scheduled thing, and you had the Semair air crew and the Airlink air crew, and they do this all the time, right? If it happens a couple times a week, they should at least be aware or wanting to know where that other aircraft is, because they see them there a couple times a week anyways, right? At the same time. The Airlink aircraft that was approaching, I feel was close enough. They have multiple radios. They should have been using one radio to talk to air traffic control to the approach frequency. And they should have been monitoring the other radio, the airfield frequency, because whether it was the Semair aircraft or a private pilot in a private aircraft, they needed to be monitoring. They should have been monitoring that airfield frequency. And the Semair aircraft, they announced their intentions. They announced their takeoff from the opposing runway, which is perfectly legal and perfectly normal. I do take a little bit of issue with them just disregarding the approach instruction to hold at that taxiway. Okay, maybe there should have been a reason that there's no good reason that if approached you can't delay 3 minutes for that aircraft to land and hold your position. But for whatever reason, the captain decided to take off opposite direction. To be honest, the aircraft should have been talking to each other. I think they didn't even come close to each other, and it's perfectly normal and legal to take off VFR from an airfield. And if the winds support it, then if sometimes that is an opposing, beak to beak takeoff. So I think this is just a timing thing, and really a couple decisions could have been made differently, but everything was entirely legal.
And the captain of the Semair aircraft did broadcast an advisory of the departure over the approach frequency as well, it says. So yeah. He probably ticked the box there at least, didn't he? So
yeah, entirely legal.
Yeah. There we are.
Yeah, is it? Are these? Does it say in the article? Are these people that are used to flying in that particular airspace? Are they used to flying in and out of those two airports?
Well, the captain has 17,000 hours, and I think over 7,000 hours time and type, and there can't be that many airports in South Africa that have this kind of commercial service. So I'm sure that they're familiar with this. Yeah. I say this because I do it all the time. I when I'm flying charter and I'm at a small airstrip, I take off VFR and I pick up my clearance in the air, and there could certainly be another aircraft on approach that is on an instrument clearance, but everybody should be monitoring the airfield frequency just like I would be monitoring. And there's the way that works. If you're both on instrument flight plans, the person on the ground is going to get a hold for a release. So they're going to get their clearance, but the approach controller, whether you're talking to them on the phone because you can't reach them or it's an uncontrolled field, they're going to tell you hold for release until I clear that airspace for you. And they cannot clear that airspace for you to take off on an instrument flight plan until that other aircraft both lands and cancels their IFR flight plan or flight following. So once the controller knows that other aircraft is on the ground, then they'll call back to the other aircraft that's holding short and then clear them and say, hey, you are released. You have 5 minutes to get off the ground. If you're not off the ground in 5 minutes, call me back.
Yeah.
Because they're blocking off that airspace. But it's perfectly legal to say, you know what, we're going to take off VFR and pick up our clearance in the air.
But I mean, 3 minutes. I mean, that's literally all they would have had to have waited, and then they would have been, Yeah. Okay. Anyway, there's much we could discuss about this particular story, but perhaps we should move on.
I know, to the next story, which is coming to us from Flight Global, and we've got a resident Airbus pilot in the chat room, Captain Nik, although he's retired now, but he still knows his stuff. This is LATAM are to equip their A380s with engine idle descent function. So Chile's LATAM Airlines will equip its fleet of Airbus A320ceo family narrowbodies with an Airbus-supplied system that reduces fuel burn by automating an optimal engines at idle descent. The descent profile optimization function, which comes as an update to the A320's flight management system, enables the A320 to descend from cruise altitude using only idle engine thrust, says Airbus. That can avoid pilots having to throttle up to level off, as they typically now do at various stages during the descent. Airbus will be delivering the updates, which come in equipment kits. I thought they'd come on USB drives, but anyway, to LATAM before year end, with deliveries to wrap up in early 2022. The Toulouse airframer says some 200 of LATAM's A320 CEO family jets will get the update. The airline and its affiliates have some 240 A320 family jets in service and storage, according to Serum Fleet's data. Airbus offers the system as a software update for first-generation CEO's A320s and A330s. Second-generation A320neos and A330neos are delivered with the technology. Some 100 Airbus jets globally have already received the update, the airframer says. The company says it's talking, with other customers about adopting the technology, but it declines to specify which airlines. Airbus says the new technology can save an average of 70 kilos or 154 pounds of fuel per flight. That equates to more than 20,000 tonnes of fuel saved annually for LATAM's A320s. Wow.
Nice.
Well, airlines always happen to save money. And we all know fuel costs a fortune.
Yeah.
Well, we do at the moment in the UK.
Oh, don't.
And this is obviously. I hope these updates go well though, because we all know, especially what happens when you update certain bits of software.
I mean, I'm guessing they're not having to queue for 3 hours for fuel like I am at the moment, are they?
No,
Good,
not at all.
Yes, I'm not even joking, guys. I last night sat at a petrol station. I arrived at 7:05.
He did,
I left the fuel station finally with my allotted £45, which is all they'd let me have worth of diesel, and I left at 10:10.
He did.
Anyway, the joys of living in the middle of nowhere.
I know.
Right, shall I do the last story then?
Do you want to do the last one?
I will. Yeah, okay. So the last story then.
This last story stinks, I tell you.
Right. Okay. Headline is Extraordinary Pigs Step In to Protect Schiphol Airport from Marauding Geese. Wow. So this is from the register.com. And it says in red here, to be read with disdain for geese at the behest of author Matt Dupuy. Nice. An unlikely battle is currently going on between the runways of one of Europe's busiest airports after a company called Extraordinary Pigs were contracted to bring their animals in to help protect Amsterdam Schiphol's airport from marauding geese. It occupies a vast site on reclaimed land and often has a lot of standing water, which makes an appealing spot for birds to roost and forage for food. The airport site's origins also make it good farmland, meaning that a lot of the surrounding area and some of the airport site, which is not under concrete, is used to grow crops. Unfortunately, the crops entice more birds, which are obviously not good things to attract at an airport. In an attempt to deter the avian infiltrators, the pigs were set up in a 500-acre, that's 202 hectares, sugar beet field between two of the airport's 6 runways immediately after it was harvested, when geese and other birds would normally be descending on the leftover scraps and critter-rich, overturned exposed soil. 20 pigs will be put on the site for 6 weeks, while a second similar area of land will be left pig-free as a control site. Special bird detecting radar will monitor the 2 sites in order to see whether the pig's presence has made a discernible difference to airport safety. The pigs were immediately brought into the field within 12 hours of the sugar beet harvest on Tuesday. Joss Harris, the pig's owner and proprietor of Beta One Varkens, Extraordinary Pigs. That's a terrible. Somebody will correct me, either Myla or Masha.
Probably,
I'm sure
yeah.
will put me right. Told Dutch paper De Telegraaf and they eat the crop residues so that there will be nothing left for the geese to get. That said, a reg source who was at Schiphol at the weekend noticed plenty of lush grasses near the runways, but failed to spot any pigs. Schiphol has a particular problem with bird strikes. Dutch flag carrier KLM reported 6.6 bird strikes per 10,000 aircraft movements in 2019. Schiphol employs 20 bird controllers who patrol the aircraft in radar-equipped vehicles named lapwings and provide air traffic control with bird updates using walkie-talkies. They also employ innovative techniques and technology to scare birds away, including special green lasers that frighten geese. Geese are a particular problem at the airport, with over 7,000 of the cranky, belligerent fowl. Wow, this benevolent fowl. This guy really doesn't like them. Rounded up and killed in 2014 alone. Other bird deterrent methods include the planting of coarse and indigestible grasses and the use of nets, gas cannons, and inflatable scarecrows. But while people chasing birds around with specially equipped cars can mitigate the problem somewhat, ultimately the airport authorities would prefer if there were just fewer birds in the vicinity, and especially geese, because they can potentially bring down an aircraft if they interact in the wrong place. It is that this herd of heroic pigs have stepped in to separate these beaked trespassers from their jet-engined nemesis. Good on you, pigs. We at the Register, which is the source that this came from, salute you. Now, you may have noticed a certain degree of anti-goose sentiment on the Reg desk today, and you would not be wrong. This scribe suffered a rather nasty incident with some geese when he was a youngster, and it's left him with the unshakable feeling that all geese can get bent wherever they may be.
Matt, I think you missed an excellent opportunity a couple times in that story to switch into your what is it, Richard Attenborough?
And here we see geese marauding across the absolutely. It's as I say, it's Matt Dupuy, who is the writer of that particular article. As I say, he's really not a fan. I think that we have learnt.
Do you think this is what we have to do now, with obviously people trying to cut back on spending money at airports? You know, they used to use birds of prey to get rid of,
Oh yeah, falconry.
Falconry, that's it. Thank you, Armando. So they can't afford them. So what's the next best thing? Pigs.
I mean, all I can think of is all that bacon, if I'm honest with you. But anyway, Mark Priestley has said it via WhatsApp: is this a truth, or pigs might fly gaff?
No, it's not. It's not April. It's not April. Don't panic.
Yeah. Which one of these 11 stories that we just read is not right? Is not real?
He's not the real one.
I like Richard Adams' comment in the chat room. He says, "Be more fun if they sorted these geese out with a warthog." Obviously, talking about the A10 warthog, which would make quite some mess if that sorted the geese out. Trust me.
I don't know.
I think we should just let Alfie loose, and you could make a lot of money.
Alfie would do a damn good job, I think, actually, of getting rid of the geese.
What, my Alfie?
Yeah. You just bark at them all the time.
We're talking about a dog here who hides under Mum's chair, like for anything, like literally.
Apart from when I walk through the back door.
Yeah, actually, well, no, that's because he knows you. But if you were an actual burglar, he'd be the first one upstairs away from it. I can assure you of that. Okay. He's the worst guard dog in the world ever. Anyway,
so that is where we bring the mix of commercial and news stories to a close this week, and we have got to say goodbye to Armando as well, because he's got to head off. To do something incredibly exciting, I expect, as always.
Well, incredibly important.
Incredibly important, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, it is. I have to go pick up Maddie, because we are going to go camping this weekend at an airfield. So here in the US. I know, right? Last week we talked a little bit about feeling normal going back to air shows, and part of that has been some of these local fly-ins.
Right.
And here on the East Coast, Triple Tree Aerodrome is a grass airstrip, and they had their big fly-in last weekend with, I think, a couple hundred airplanes and a couple thousand people that showed up. It's all outdoors. And our local airport where we do skydiving is having their fly-in tomorrow all day long. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go pick up Maddie from school. We're going to go shopping, and we're going to go camping in a hangar and just hang out overnight until the airplanes start landing in the morning. And then we're just going to run around and eat some barbecue. And
wait, hang on a minute. Can I come?
Yeah,
sounds like so much
So
fun.
we get a field in the middle of nowhere here full of cowpats and flies that bite the hell out of you.
Right.
Armando gets a hangar with aircraft and
Quite, absolutely.
aviation.
You know, I mean, it's how it should be.
I'll take some pictures and we'll send them out to.
Absolutely.
Thanks for that. Well,
Okay.
have a great
Absolutely,
weekend.
guys.
Have a great weekend.
Take care, y'all.
Yeah, take care.
Bye, Armando.
Now, I'm super. I am so excited about what's coming up next, and Nev is going to tell us all about it.
Yes, I am. Well, when we do these big interviews, because we don't know much about aviation ourselves, when we've got someone important to interview, we tend to subcontract this to someone that does. And I can think of the Sir Richard Johns interview, Captain John Hutchinson interview, and this interview, which we have subcontracted to Captain Nik, because he knows what he's talking about. Well, he tells us he does anyway.
Those are the rumours, yes.
But this is going to be the first, I think, about a 3-part series, I hope, and we'll probably put up on the YouTube channel as a separate piece as well. But Nik and I went down in the cars the other day, filled up with petrol, diesel and equipment to bring you this interview. Below-knee amputee Mike Wildeman leads Team Phoenix, which flies the Super Yak 52 aircraft. Mike's background is that of a tactical C-130 pilot with the RAF and the Belgian Air Force. He saw active service in the First Gulf War, Bosnia, Somalia and Rwanda. For the last 25 years, Mike has been an airline pilot serving as an Airbus A330 and A340 commander with Virgin Atlantic Airways, and he also in fact flew alongside Captain Nik on some trips as well. Mike is also a part-time A320 type rating instructor and examiner with Wizz Air and the L3 Harris Airline Training Academy in London. Mike also led the Barders Bus Company, the UK's first disabled air display team, which flew a successful UK air show season in 2019. Well, Captain Nik and I met Mike at Henstridge Airport, which is located between Salisbury and Yeovil in the West Country of the UK, where Nik talked to him about his life and times as an aviator.
I first met Mike on the 30th of August 1997. I was a brand new captain on the Airbus A340, and he was a very patient and able companion on only my 3rd trip after completing my training. As I recall, we flew off to Los Angeles and promptly rented Harley-Davidson Fat Boy motorbikes from Route 66.
You did, yeah.
And with a couple of our very pretty cabin crew on the pillions, we took to the hills. From then on, we regularly shared the cockpit and had adventures far and wide. We were driving around the game parks in South Africa with your lovely mum, as I recall. That was a very memorable one. And I was very sorry to get the news that she'd sadly passed away, Mike.
Thank you.
During our long hours together on the flight deck, I always enjoyed hearing about your exploits in the RAF and strange faraway places. And I look forward to talking about all that again. So when I was thinking about who would make a great subject for an aviation interview, the name of Mike Wildeman came straight into my head, and I'm delighted that we found the time to talk. So many thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks, Nik. It's lovely to see you again, and I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Mike, look, I'm going to take you right back to the beginning, if I may, and we can work through your fascinating life. Tell us about your family.
Mum and Dad, 2 sisters. We've all been reasonably successful in life. Neither my mum or my dad are with us anymore, but my dad was an electronics engineer, as my mum was initially, and that had a kind of aviation bent, and I think that's where my interest initially came from, because my father was managing director of a company called Penny and Giles, and they made the first black boxes in the UK for Concorde and British Airways and all sorts of jets, and I think we might have even flown with them in our Virgin Atlantic airplanes. So from an early stage, I was in an environment with airplanes, and certainly we used to go to Farnborough and places like that every year through my dad's company. My mum was a cytologist, so basically she studied cancer smears and that sort of stuff. 2 sisters, one of them is Chief Financial Officer for Siemens Europe, and the other had a great career as in HR, Group HR Director, so we've all done reasonably well.
Well, that's brilliant. What was your life like growing up?
I had a lovely idyllic life, lived on the south coast in a place called Highcliffe near Christchurch, Bournemouth area. Happy at school, did pretty well, played for the football team, played for the captain of the tennis team. Initially I was in the Boys Brigade growing up, and I've always liked being in kind of organisations. The Boys Brigade was an absolutely fantastic organisation. I was there from about 8 years old. But then when the flying looked like it was going to become an influence in my life, then I swapped across, as we do, at 13 to the Air Training Corps, and joined the Air Training Corps at 13 as well. So I then went through normal O-levels, A-levels, and then eventually university.
Excellent. So where in your life would you position your first interest in aviation and your desire to become a pilot?
I think at about 11 years old or something like that, Dad took me to Farnborough, and I've got a vivid memory of Concorde getting airborne. We were in the chalets, and so we were quite far back from the line. But I can remember the earth shaking with those 4 afterburners in as it got airborne, and just being completely mesmerised and hooked by it. And that's kind of my earliest, God, I want to be a pilot memory. And so when I could join the Air Training Corps at 13, I did that. I went through that sort of process. As I recall, and you might have done a similar thing, they had something called tests in advance for the RAF, which you could take at about 15, which I did and passed. And then they allowed you to go and visit Air Force bases. And I think I visited about 3 or 4 for the weekend around the country. So by that stage, I was completely and utterly taken. But there was only ever one thing I ever wanted to do.
That's brilliant. I have a similar memory of being on the runway at Bristol Filton on an Air Training Corps camp, sitting on the grass beside the runway in the sunshine when one of the prototypes of Concorde took off. And having spent an hour or 2 waiting in the glorious sunshine and absolute quiet, the ear-splitting noise of that airplane was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole, literally, I was lucky enough to see a shuttle launch once, and it was a similar thing where the ground actually physically shook, and that was remarkable.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So you'd already made up your mind to join the Air Force. How did that all go?
Up and down. I went to the RAF at 18 after my A-levels. Went all the way through the aptitude tests, etc., and the interviews at Biggin Hill, as it was in those days. Passed them all, but then was told that I didn't have the level of maturity required. So I went off to university. Hard to imagine, isn't it, Nick? So I went to university. Halfway through university, I applied for a bursary, which was where they pay for some of your costs. Did the entire selection procedure again, passed it all, was still told that they didn't think my level of maturity was high enough. So I did a 4-year degree. It was a business studies degree, which I didn't particularly want to do, but I just had to go and get a degree because they hadn't taken me on. So I was working for a company in Bournemouth as a kind of trainee systems analyst, and it was for Max Factor, you know, the perfume manufacturer. Anyway, they had a downturn and made 30% of the workforce unemployed, including me. At that stage I was working behind the bar at Bournemouth Flying Club, just because I wanted to be around aeroplanes. I went back to my boss at Bournemouth Flying Club and said, I need a job for the next 9 months. It needs to look like it's something sensible. So we said that I was going to install a computer system, but in fact I was cleaning and refueling the aeroplanes every day. But what it meant is that I could work and get 1 hour's flying a week. So I did 1 hour's flying a week for nearly 6 months. And then I worked nights in a warehouse to get money to live. So I was working 7 days a week, day and night, but it gave me a chance to get my PPL. I did that for 6 months, and then I was really lucky that a company at Bournemouth, which is now called Draken and was Cobham, but was then Flight Refuelling Limited, paid for an Air League flying scholarship. And I won a flying scholarship through the Air League, and then I was suddenly able to finish the whole thing in about 6 weeks flat, flying every day, and that was marvellous. So in my year out in industry, I managed to go away and get a PPL. So when I came back at the end of university, went back to the Air Force for the third time, either they were impressed with that or they were just tired of me keep coming back, but eventually they offered me a job.
I think persistence often pays.
I think it does, yeah.
So they eventually let you in. Presumably you did pretty standard officer training. Was that at Henlow or?
No, it was IoT at Cranwell. I did that.
Oh, you posh boy.
Oh, well, I was very posh. And then we held, which was a lot of us did in those days, and I had a year's holding one fighter squadron at Wittering, which was just fantastic. I was called Kev because their first holding pilot years before had been called Kev, and after that every holding pilot was called Kev. But what it did mean is I got lots and lots of backseat rides in T4 Harriers. In fact,
oh wow,
I think I had 50 hours on the Cessna 152. The Air Force needed to get rid of some time expired £1,000 bombs at Garvey Island, and I ended up in the backseat of a T4 Harrier dropping bombs on Garvey Island with 50 hours in a Cessna 152. So it's amazing the sort of opportunities you get, when you're going through flying training. That sort of thing.
Absolutely. They took you under their arm, did they?
They did. It was wonderful. And this was in '85. The squadron had been at war in '82 down in the Falklands, and lots of the guys who'd seen operational service down there were still there. So it was just a fantastic time.
Oh, I imagine you were just soaking up those war
It was
stories.
amazing. Yeah. So after that, I went back to Cranwell again, and I did my initial flying training and lead-in for fast jets on the Jet Provost 5. So I was lucky that I didn't have to fly the JP3, which apparently was a challenge.
I found it interesting.
I'm sure. I'm sure. So I was lucky, went straight into that. So I did a year and a half at Cranwell, was streamed onto the Hawk, went off to Valley and completed the Hawk course, got my wings at Valley, went off to Chivner, which we called Heaven in Devon. Do you remember that?
I went to Brodie myself.
Did you? Yeah, we had two tactical weapons units. I went there, and that's where the wheels started to come off a bit. I don't think I was aggressive enough for them. And when we got to the air combat phase, basically I kept getting shot down, Nick, which is probably something you've never heard of, but it happened to me quite a lot. And so at that stage, I was working pretty hard. Not enjoying it anymore, and basically we decided to call it quits then, and I went off to fly multi-engine aeroplanes, which probably wasn't a bad thing. I ended up being a below average, instead of being a below average fast jet pilot, I was above average multi-engine pilot, so probably not a bad thing. I was very lucky, and I was off before that again, another holding section of holding.
Yeah, did a bit of that myself.
Up at Finningley, and they had an air experience flight on flying chipmunks.
Oh,
and
wow.
I had a year doing aerobatics flying chipmunks again. So how lucky was I as a 25-year-old guy? So got my enjoyment in and interest in aerobatics sort of started, I think. Then went off and was posted to Lynham to C-130 Hercules. And again, just really, really lucky. I was in the right place at the right time as far as the Gulf War was concerned. But the C-130 was just such a fabulous plane. Massively overpowered. We had the stretch version because it had much more carrying capability than it had actual space to carry the freight. So from a carrying point of view, so it was overpowered, which meant it was great fun to fly. I was on a tactical squadron, which meant we did do the flying around the world at low speed, going to parties sort of thing, the grey and green party machine. I remember going to Hong Kong, and it took us 3 days to get there. And when you think that on the 340, it was 11 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah,
so, so lots of fun flying around the world, but also the main squadron's task there was support of the parachute battalion. And so the idea is that you'd get up to 16 aircraft flying in formation, and then have a parallel drop zone where 8 would be dropping 600 guys, and on the other side of the landing zone, you'd be dropping small tanks, vehicles, ammunition, all the stuff that's required. So you could effectively drop an entire battalion and its equipment in something like a minute and a half over an airfield. And that was very exciting as well. The guys, we'd fly around at sub 250 feet, then pop up to 500 feet and drop the guys out. And when you think these guys were flying with no reserve, the parachutists were jumping out with no reserve from 500 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were expecting something like 1% casualty rate. Well, when you're dropping 600 guys, that's 5 or 6 guys every time getting injured or killed. So it was very operational and very enjoyable.
What was the Herc like flying in formation?
Well, this was done in something called... I flew it a lot more later in Belgium in close formation, but this was in we had something called ski, which was station keeping equipment, and it was between kind of a transponder element and a radar element, and we'd be flying around in a kind of stretched formation of 16, and then you had a radar screen at the front, and you could see where the blip in front of you was, and you had a timing chart, and it was all done on timing. But we were flying, so the idea is that you fly around in the 16 ship. If you went into bad
big
weather,
long snake.
Yeah, big long snake.
Wow.
But and then if you went IMC, you all pulled up to MSA to safety altitude in formation,
In cloud.
in cloud. Flew the rest of the route until there was a gap, and then you went back down. And so and sometimes you'd be flying around in cloud, and suddenly it would clear, and there'd be aircraft everywhere. And I don't remember, but similar age to me. There used to be a TV program called Ski Sunday,
Oh yeah.
and this stuff was called Ski, and we always used to go do it on the weekends. So it was always Ski Sunday was a 16 ship of C-130s. So that was fabulous fun. The Herc also was great because it had so many roles. We were trained in both. We weren't a tanker squadron; that was on the other side of the airfield. But we were trained to receive and air-to-air refueling. We did obviously all the tactical stuff, but also search and rescue. So the tasking was really, really interesting as well. Yeah, so,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you weren't just involved in training; you actually took part in operations. So
Yes, we did.
you were in the first Gulf War, yeah?
Yeah, we were, and that was interesting. We shipped out to Riyadh initially, and we were based out there for a number of months, and a few other airfields as well. And again, flying various missions. Sometimes, behind enemy lines, there was some interesting stuff
Were
going.
you involved in dropping our special troops back there?
A little bit of that, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And I was explaining to somebody the other day, it was in the embryonic stage of GPS. So we didn't really have GPS. We had an INAS that didn't work very well. GPS was just about coming in, and we were flying around, over the desert at low level using a map and a stopwatch, and maps that had come from from 30 or 40 years before, and you'd be flying along, and suddenly there'd be a 6-lane highway come below you. There's nothing on the map. So it was very interesting time.
Were you out there as single ships or in formations?
Single ships.
Okay, so you were completely lights out. And
Yeah.
what kind of defensive equipment had they given you?
We had jamming pods, and we had chaff and flare as well on some of the
Okay.
airplanes, not on the main squadron airplanes.
So they were kind to you,
Yes,
sort of.
they were, sort of. Yeah.
Exciting stuff. So you were also out in Bosnia?
Yeah.
Similar sort of work out there?
Well, that was interesting because by that stage I'd come home, and I'd been lucky enough to get an exchange with the Belgian Air Force.
Oh, okay.
So this was with the
Excellent.
Belgian government, and they were inserting special forces. If you remember at the time in Sarajevo, people were getting shot crossing the road by snipers.
Oh, absolutely. It was
and,
awful, wasn't
and
it?
so our job was to sort of take some people in and try and resolve the situation. But that was quite hairy. I remember one particular time when we flew in and we landed these guys, and they were walking mortars, crump, 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 across the airfield towards the aeroplane, knowing that they couldn't really do any major damage. They were just basically playing with our balls, sort of thing.
Wow.
And that was quite something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know one of the stories I remember you telling me, because I think we were probably on a Lagos trip and talking about malaria was that you've been out doing humanitarian aid missions out in Africa. And I know that you caught a deadly form of malaria out there, but can you just tell us the whole story?
Yeah, I was down in Mombasa, flying in and out of Somalia, which we could talk about a bit later on. And somehow, well, obviously I got bitten by a female, as you do, because it's only the females that carry malaria. I don't know if you know that. And I caught something called falciparum. There's two lots of malaria. One which keeps coming back, which isn't so serious, but falciparum is 3 days coma, 4 days death. It's that quick. I came back to Belgium, was feeling, it's got about a 2-week incubation period. Came back, was feeling desperately sick. Went to see the doctors at Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe. Saw an American doctor who said that she thought there was nothing wrong with me. She sent me home. I came back the next day because I was so ill. Unfortunately, there was a British doctor there who'd been down in Belize and done the tropical medicine course and said, I think it could be malaria. I was airlifted to Vegberg on day 3, where I did go into a coma, and I survived. They saved me. So one of my many near-death experiences, Nick. The first of many.
You've had a few,
yes,
absolutely. That is terrifying, because it was only really your story there that made me so aware of it, and I think our union did a great job getting us some decent protection from that when we used to fly to these places, because I think Nigeria was second on the list of the worst areas in the world for
and a couple of our pilots did actually get falciparum, I know.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the man with 9 lives is the first thing that springs into mind there.
Actually, I'd like to point out, I mean, I wasn't there. Obviously, Nev was there. I'd like to point out that wasn't a green screen behind Nick.
No, I mean, that must have been so nice as well, because, I mean, obviously the last set of interviews that we did, obviously, with... I've forgotten already. Anyway, because he was in Australia, wasn't he? And we did it down the line. And I mean, that was fine, but it must have been so nice, Nev, to sort of like do it in person.
Yes, very much so. And Mike's a fascinating character, and I really enjoyed listening to Nick's chat with him. And we've got another couple of parts coming up as well when I've edited those. So really looking forward to it. But a fascinating story from Mike. And obviously Mike's organisation relies heavily on sponsorship and assistance from other companies as well. So let's just play a quick video of Mike telling us how we can get in touch with him.
Mike, if someone did want to get in touch with you, how would they go about that?
Best way would be through the website. That's teamphoenixair.com, and that's Phoenix, Phoenix. So teamphoenixair.com. My email address is there, but also you could call me on my telephone number. The UK cell number is +44 7973 762 301.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Absolutely. I'm sure they'd be grateful if anybody has got a bit of spare change. I'm sure they'd be very grateful.
Mike's a brave man putting his phone number out. But,
he is. Yeah, true that.
But genuinely speaking, if anybody is interested in sponsorship with them or has contacts in that kind of area, then please get in contact with Mike, because I think it's an incredibly worthwhile cause. In the next couple of parts, we're talking a bit more about Mike's disability and also the formation flying that they do with the Yak 52 aircraft as well. So,
and of course, it goes without saying, obviously, our extra special personal thanks to the legend that is Captain Nik for running the interview as well, and for you, Nev, obviously, because I say that
well done.
Looks
well
beautiful.
Done,
it really does. Really, really good. Well done, team.
Very pleased with it. And the sun was shining too. So
I know, and it was a horrendous day here when you were up there filming it. Yeah. We honestly had visions of you doing it from inside a hangar. The weather was so bad.
I personally think that both Nev and Nik should be working on a large media outlet station, because some of the stuff that we're seeing on the TV nowadays is not of this standard, I will say.
Well, there is
I'm
that.
not just blowing our own trumpet here on PTUK, but I'm just putting it out there.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Anyway, come on, we're going to run out of time soon.
Next up then on the show is our Caption This.
Is it?
Just for fun.
Is it?
So, those of you who follow
I don't think
us...
it is.
I think you're wrong there, sir. Sorry about that.
Oh, is it... Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead here.
What are you doing?
I'm jumping ahead
Go
here.
on.
Okay, next up, we hand things over to Nev, which, for those of you tuned in last week, which I did, I listened to it as an audio podcast, which is weird, actually. I listened to last week's show as an audio podcast, not a video.
Did you?
Yeah, which is really weird for me.
Oh, okay.
It's good, though. It's different when you listen back. Honestly, it's really good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You would have heard the awesome interview with Pytch Air. So, Nev, what's this second part, then?
Yeah, we're going back into the 727, which is sitting in Pytch Air's car park with me talking to Johnny Palmer about how he got it there and the circumstances surrounding it. So this will be a fascinating part 2 of the interview. Going right back to your early days, when did you start the business and how did it come to get to where it is today?
So I'm involved in a few businesses. Are we talking about Pytch here? Fine. So started out with audio at 9 years old. Love sound. Just love it. Got some old hi-fi equipment that I got from the rubbish dump in Tasmania and started doing more and more increasingly elaborate, bizarre things with hi-fi, and then got into DJing because I like sound systems. Why not DJ, right? And then became quite commercial with my DJing, made money, bought more equipment, and then built a production company. Then became an adult and started realising that production's about delivering messages. So used all that technical and creative resource to start delivering messages for clients.
And when did you come to the UK?
98.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And how different...
I don't know what airplane I was, and what would have that been?
Well, that could have been probably 747, I would imagine.
It wasn't, though, because I don't remember if it had 2 stories. It was from Melbourne to Kuala Lumpur. A340?
Oh, that could have been
A330?
the 330 or 340 probably, yeah. Or
Yeah.
777 maybe.
Could have been, actually. Yeah.
But did you get back? Under normal circumstances, would you get back there?
I've been back to Australia 3 times in 20-something years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Bristol's home.
Your home's sitting there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just going back to the aircraft that we're sitting on,
Yeah.
how much work did you have to do to get it into the shape that it's in now?
Okay, so when it turned up here, it smelt like a caravan. There was mould on the roof and nothing worked. So first thing was, obviously, let's get the internet working. So that was pretty quick and easy. Then it was the lighting. Then the cleaning. I reckon I've probably spent, personally, several hundred hours on it. And I think the team overall probably spent over 1,000 hours on this aircraft to make it what it is now. And we're not finished, not even close.
Now, the last time I saw you, which was several weeks ago, we were having a nice chat. Yeah. The next thing I noticed is that a skylight has been cut into the roof. Is that a new addition?
Yeah, the skylight's a new addition. I mean, looking at it now, it looks like, yeah, no big deal. Nah, it was. And getting on the roof with a jigsaw and a hole saw cutting into an airplane, that was a weird experience. And I'll admit, I drilled the hole in the wrong place as well.
Oh, fantastic!
So I went out to go a little bit nuts on the silicon, and the flashing band.
How difficult was that to drill through there?
Well, the skin of the aircraft, as you probably know, very thin. I mean, more than a Coke can, but definitely not plate steel. Must have been about 1 millimetre or 2. Then with a very thin, I think, fiberglass insulation. And that's between structural ribs because it's a monocoque structure, of course.
Yeah.
So you've got to find a position for that. Find your position, drill a hole through, and then drill your hole around it to put the skylight through.
Gosh.
I know, it's fun.
And did it come with any sort of mechanical operation manuals or anything like that?
No, there's a story that apparently, when it was still airworthy back in 2012 at Filton Airfield, of all places up the road, some bills weren't paid, so all the paperwork went missing. And that apparently was the cause for it not flying again.
Is that right?
Apparently. So I'm hearing all sorts of rumours online.
Fantastic.
I invite any new rumours, even if they're not entirely true. It's all
well,
stories.
When you write your book, it's got to be in there, isn't it? You know? Definitely.
We're trying to start some rumours about the aeroplane. It's good fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's such a delightful place to be, isn't it? And also from the acoustics are fantastic, aren't they?
They are good. They were very into making it very quiet. They called it the whisper jet, didn't they, in the 60s? Interestingly, the heat insulation is very poor because when you're blasting in bleed air, you're not really worried about heat. If anything, you're trying to cool it down. So the heat insulation is very poor, but the sound insulation is very good.
Interesting.
Which is not what I would have thought.
No, indeed. And what's your clients' impressions when they come on board?
I I'd like to think that they feel inspired and like engaged. I actually think they're not surprised and they just roll their eyes and
They go, oh, Johnny's doing something wacky again.
Almost
so.
what they'd expect. But
Yes.
yeah, that's good fun. It's good fun. It's a great environment. And I also think psychologically, when we get on an airplane, we're used to being on a plane, our phone's not accessible, we have to settle in for a bit of like a trip. And I think psychologically, our subconscious tunes into that same thing on board Pytch Air. So people come here, they calm down, they're very receptive. Conversations that might normally be 20 minutes become an hour and a half, much more human, much more memorable. Yeah. So I think in a weird way, it becomes actually a perfect meeting space.
And of course, they've been used to Teams and Zoom conversations for the last 18 months, which for the first month was, very interesting and exciting. But now it's just become horrific because you've got that hard stop at 3 o'clock or whatever it is now.
Which can be a good thing sometimes.
That is true.
Yeah.
But at the moment, we've got people going, oh, it's, 1:59, I've got to stop. But when they're in a relaxed environment like they are here, it really does encourage more lengthy conversations, doesn't it?
Yeah, and often a bit of a 20 minutes. So like, what do you do for fun? I find myself socially using tricks like saying, so what are you into? And then just being quiet and letting them talk for 10 minutes, which is really nice, After a world of not being able to have really human connections that much, just let people talk and just chat and find out, dance around conversations a bit, which is kind of nice. You find the real essence of what people are passionate about in their work or their businesses, and it's so much more fun.
I remember the first time we met just a few weeks ago. Yeah. Question number one was, apart from we're going to go down the road to get some breakfast, was, how many kids have you got? How are they? And that kind of stuff. And so straight away, I've got to start talking because that's the way you do it, isn't it?
I think it's a lot better. Whereas if we met in the office just over there, it'd be much more cool. Do you want a coffee? Cool. What are we talking about? Gender? Go. And it'd be bish, bosh, bash. And although it might use less time, I actually think there's less value in that communication and less return from that time investment because you're not really getting any deeper connection or you're finding out the real thing that's going on with someone, which might be with the area that you work in.
Yeah. So what's going to be next for the aircraft? It's where it is. It seems to be very complete from what I can see. What are you going to do next to it?
I want to just keep pushing the boundaries more and more to the point of ridiculous with the tech in here. So we're doing some crazy stuff with multi-circuit power metering so we can start analysing where our power usage is. I've just reinstated the ventilation system. I want to start playing with circulating MVHR air systems. I want to do more with the audio as well. Just playing with different tech. Because for me, this is the perfect test bed to try things that I might then roll out to my commercial property investments. So we can try things here and see if we apply them to other properties as well.
And you've got a lot of vendor buy-in as well, haven't you? I mean, certainly for the company I work for, Biamp,
got some toys.
We're very much up for it. I know the folks at Midwich are as well. Was that a very easy win to get these folks on board?
Well, I've been reading about influencers. People on Instagram, because they've got 20,000 followers, they get free hotel rooms. I'm like, that's interesting. I thought, I think we've got a bit of a voice in doing weird stuff technically. Maybe I should just say, hey guys, I'm doing some stuff. Anyone want to get involved? Do me a deal? And then Biamp come back with a bunch of like amazing toys and are happy to give them to us. Just I believe for the exposure and the funny storytelling. So I'm like, this is good. I've now said to the team here at Pytch, do interesting stuff, guys, and let your supply chain know because they might love to get involved, be it just, lending us a bit of toys or, never know, giving us some kit every now and again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, like, engage with the supply chain. It's a lot more fun as well.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Is there anything else you want to talk about whilst we haven't covered?
I want to talk about who's got operational 727s who will let me get in the jump seat.
So how are we going to get you into an operational 727, Johnny?
So there's a few operational around the world. We've got the chaps from Oil Spill, yeah. We've been in contact, guys. I'm waiting for that phone call. Matt Goad out in 0G in the States. Matt, I'm here. I really want to get in a 727 that flies. How are we going to do it? Maybe someone watching has got one. If they call me anytime, day or night, I will be there.
So I understand that you ended up being a flight engineer on one. Is that correct?
Sort of. So Mark, who sold me this one's got two more, one of which has engines. And I said, Mark, anytime you're doing something, just give me a call. And one day Mark said, oh, Johnny, you're around next week. You can come along. And I was like, yeah, cool. And I got to be the flight engineer in a taxiing operation for the day. It was awesome. I got to fire up the APU. I got to turn on the bleed air valves. Got to switch the generator switch. My hand got slapped at one point, though, because I nearly went from the generator 1 to the ground power switch. Right. You know what would happen then, right? Yes. The power would cut out. And Mark's hand just whacked me away. That was fun. And he took it out into the runway at Kemble just to do some engine checks. And, engine 1 at a time, full power. And geez, this thing wanted to take off. Yeah, and I was like, are you not just tempted to just turn that brake and just
Yeah. And of course the panel, we just don't see that panel now on any aircraft. Cool. I mean, that's all gone, and it's all handled by the two pilots and the overhead panel. So to actually have a seated position there is fantastic.
And from what I gather from some of the old flight engineers, the job wasn't that intense for a lot of them. It was a bit, pitot heat, window heat. When do we eat is the phrase I'm hearing.
Monitoring the two fellas up front, make sure they're not making a mistake, perhaps.
There seems to be an interesting dynamic across the three-person flight crew.
Yeah.
From what I gather, there's a bit of rivalry almost.
I think so. And they also did sort of pilot incapacitation where they changed seats, so the flight engineer could fly the aircraft.
Right.
But wasn't massively practiced at it because that wasn't his normal position.
I reckon I could do it on my own. I'd love to get into a simulator of a 727. And just see, can I fly this thing on my own? I reckon I could.
I think you probably could.
Do you reckon?
Yeah.
Where would it go wrong though? Because they must have had 3 people for a reason, right? And I've read the flight manual, and it does seem like you probably could do it on your own if you really had to.
Yeah, it's a bit like having, it's trying to hang wallpaper on your own, isn't it? Basically.
You could, but it wouldn't be a very good job.
Yeah.
You'd probably get through a lot of wallpaper.
And there's a lot of fuel management and electrics management going on and that kind of stuff, which is, a lot of it is entirely automatic.
I think your viewers will know that Johnny's not a qualified pilot from the things I'm coming out with. I'm sure someone would be like absolutely cringing at the things I'm saying.
But would you like to be?
I would love to. That'd be brilliant. I'd love it if there was some simulators out there. There must have been simulators of 72s. Where are they? Where are they? I want to go and play in one. That'd be amazing.
We could always go on the one that used to be at Filton for Concorde. That's now at the Brooklands Museum.
Is that operational?
Yeah, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it like a proper sim? As in, like, if I get it wrong, it's going to be like you just
died?
I
mean, it's not a level D sim, so the thing's not moving. It's a fixed base one. But no, I've flown it a couple of times.
Really?
And, yeah. It's a good day out.
What, everything? Fuel management, the whole lot?
Yeah.
All the kit?
Yeah.
Is it computer control?
Yes, and actually compared to what it was like, because in the old days it was a rather juddery camera going over a landscape.
Yeah.
Now all the gaming folks have got into it, and the visual is so much better than the ones that the crews were originally trained on.
Amazing, that'd be fun. I'd enjoy that a lot. But yeah, what a beautiful aircraft, the 72. I just love it. And the electronics. I love the electromechanical nature. There's no microchips in this thing at all, I don't think. So when you open up the avionics, it is literally like big clunky relays.
Solenoids and yes.
Solenoids clunking away. Yeah. Noisy as well. They make the aircraft shake actually sometimes. Yeah.
And what about spare parts? What happens if something goes wrong?
Or what could go wrong, It couldn't get much worse. I mean, what would go wrong on this? A door would maybe not work. That would be a problem. We already had to fit some neoprene around the doors. That was an issue. What else? I suppose any leaks. I mean, it's already 50 years old and it's, not got any leaks. So, yeah, it's all pretty good, really.
A lot of our viewers and listeners would be very keen, I'm sure, to acquire their own aircraft. Have you got some experience that you could pass on to them?
Yeah, first thing to remember is there's actually a lot of old aircraft out there. Most of them, at the point when the engines have gone and the avionics, are pretty much scrap. In fact, I gather from some people that as scrap, they're not worth very much at all. So they are for the taking, if you know who to speak to. The challenge is the transport and the land and the planning commission. So I'd recommend that anyone who does this, get yourself some land, get planning permission, that's critical, and then try and find yourself a fuselage. And you might be surprised that it's not as expensive as you might have thought.
Most of our viewers are married or have partners. I just wonder how that works when this aircraft suddenly turns up.
Well, when I told my wife about this, she just was like, "What are you on about, John?" I was like, "Seriously, it's so cool. You'll love it." But like a lot of things I do, I have a vision that's a little bit half baked. I know it's going to be something good, but I'm not sure what yet. So I sort of step into that wilderness and start doing the thing and see what comes of it. And then the end product is indisputably pretty cool, I think. I'm very proud of it.
And
There's no modesty here about the airplane. I love it.
And you seem to have brought everybody with you as well. I mean, I'm sure maybe some of your staff were possibly a bit sceptical at the beginning, but...
well, I think in a way they're like, "Oh my God, this sounds ridiculous. He won't." And they're like, "But hang on, he probably will do it, actually. So let's see what's going on." So what I try to do is get people excited in different ways and help them explore where their passions are. So some of the team here love their electronics. Like, hey, let's get involved. Let's do some electronic stuff. Other people are interested in food and drink, so let's try and put a good kitchen in. So I tried to get more people involved in the things that they're passionate about, so they can learn from. Because these kind of projects, on your own, it's no fun. It's about bringing people together and having a laugh and creating some fun stuff. It's very much to me a community-based thing. If this is just me on my own, it wouldn't be fun at all. They're kind of like the jokes, the humour, the kind of like sharing it together, the silliness of it. That's in a way where the value is.
Johnny, I've really enjoyed our chat today. Thank you very much indeed. And it's been an absolute privilege to meet you and to share the 727 with you.
Well, thank you. And if there's any operational 727 owners out there, please get in contact, because I would love to come on board sometime.
I think if he got himself one of those, I think his staff might lose that.
I don't think this is the end of the story. I think he's got something else up his sleeve, which he's not letting us know.
Right.
Absolutely fascinating to talk to Johnny, and really grateful for his time as well. And, really great stuff.
We were saying when we were watching that, we absolutely love the seats, the high back.
Yeah.
And you were saying they were actually they were genuine seats from that particular.
When the aircraft was converted into executive,
like a VIP,
aircraft, those seats were put in, and they look fantastic, don't they?
Yeah.
So and it's a nice place to be. Actually, it's a very, very nice environment to be in, sitting in those areas. Yeah,
very cool.
I know we've got to move on, but Nev, I've got to ask a quick question. That aircraft's got an audio system built in. I think, as you said, it's got an audio system all built in with speakers and stuff in there.
Yes, the company I work for supplied all of the audio gear for it. Yes.
So, am I right in thinking that if you wanted to, you could pump the ambient noise of an aircraft in flight through the speakers?
No. Yes, I think if you wanted to go that far, there's no reason why you
it was something I thought about the other day when we watched these. When I watched these before we put them out live and stuff, is that if you could put that noise, because you can download that noise, you can actually download the noise of an aircraft in flight in the cabin.
Right. Okay.
It's just.
I mean, yeah, sure.
That could be irritating if you were having a meeting, though, couldn't it?
Yes, I think that might be a little frustrating. The novelty will wear off after about 1.5 minutes if it were me.
All right, fair enough.
But
we won't be doing that in the PTUK studios anytime soon.
Please don't.
Moving swiftly on, because we are running right on the time here.
We are over
Caption
time,
This, for those of you who follow us on social media, Facebook especially, we do a Caption This every Wednesday. And we put a picture on Facebook and ask you to give us your most funniest and wittiest comments. This week, the picture I posted was very apt for the situation that we are currently having here in the UK, where we are having people filling up carrier bags and wheelie bins and waste baskets with fuel because of the fuel crisis we're having here.
Okay.
And
try not to make it too political.
I know.
Carlos,
Matt
please.
will put the picture up on the screen.
Now, first things first here, Nev. I don't know if you've noticed this on the particular picture, but I can't remember the last time that fuel was 130 something.
No, I think that was slightly out of date, isn't it?
Yeah, just a while ago. Also, I can't remember the last time I saw an Esso petrol station. But anyway, that's another. Anyway,
we've had loads of comments in, really good ones.
Go on, Carlos. You whiz through them.
And the first one is from Nick, who says, "Can you please fold your wings at pump 6?" Nev, what does Andy say?
Andy says, sorry, I thought this was a jet station.
Oh.
See what he did there?
Yeah. I like that, yeah. I think that's my favourite so far.
Stephen?
So that's where that's where all the fuel went. Was
exactly, big tanks.
Absolutely.
Neil says, "I can't get much fuel for a buck in here." Buck in here.
Buccaneer.
Why is that, Matt?
Because that's a buccaneer.
Well done, Matt. Yes. Well done.
Okay. It's only because he told me just before I should.
Don't tell everyone. Oh, God.
Anyway, Simon, what did Simon have to say, Nev?
Simon says, pump 6, could you turn off your engine, please? You're melting next door's plant.
That was my personal favourite. Simon, if you're listening, Simon, that was absolutely fantastic.
Don't make me laugh.
Paul says, "Who cares about the Buccaneer on the forecourt? That's the cheapest petrol I've seen in ages."
Right. Where is this? Yeah, good point, well made. Steve says, "Big coffee for big jet pilots." That's very true. It's a large cost of coffee just to the left there. Yeah, Nev, what's Jake got to say?
Yeah, Jake says, when they said they were bringing in the army to sort the petrol crisis.
Alan says, "The most recent Top Gear adventure did not work out as planned."
Right. Indeed. Daniel says, due to the lack of tanker drivers, the British government go green to ease the fuel situation.
Stephen says, pumps enforced by missile defence.
They could have done with that this week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
James says, fast jet pilots scramble to fuel stations after Wing Commander demands aircraft must not return to base with less than half a tank of fuel.
Right, yeah. James, Esso dear. I see what you did with that. So dear, I didn't expect to see a Buccaneer.
Oh my word!
Oh my goodness! There's puns all over the place here.
Nev.
Yeah, Glenn says proof that a jet engine can run on diesel.
I'd like to see that.
Right, yes.
David says, fill her up, and could you check the oil, wipe the windscreen, and put air in tyres, please?
Right, indeed. And Darry says, Goose, go around. Full power now. Your tail hook is not down.
My word. Big thanks to everyone who's.
I should just explain also the picture that we're talking about here.
Oh yes, for the audio listeners.
It's a bit. Oh dear, you better do it.
The picture for our audio listeners is an Esso petrol station here in the UK, which has a Buccaneer jet parked on the forecourt awaiting a fill up of fuel.
I bet he didn't have to wait 3 hours for his fuel.
That's what Richard Adams said.
Indeed.
So a big thanks to everyone who's contributed this week to our Caption This. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page next Wednesday for our next picture, which you can comment on. So if you don't already give us a like or a follow on Facebook, check us out on Facebook and just give us a little like, little tick thingy. What's name?
A little tick thingy.
What's name? Don't forget the what's name. So
moving
next
on.
part of the show, and this is our final part of the series that we had with the interview with Elliot Seguin. And in this last part, we get to hear Elliot's answer to the famous PTUK last question.
So we have a standard question that all of the guests get asked on the show.
Okay.
If you could fly any aircraft, past, present, future, could be military, could be commercial, could be GA, whatever you like, what would you fly? And this is coming to a guy, I don't think I'm ever going to meet somebody that's probably flown as many aircraft as you. You've flown a lot of aircraft. In fact, that would be a good second question. How many aircraft do you think you've flown?
So 100 types is where I'm sitting.
100, wow, okay.
Which you'll meet people that have flown many more than me. Don't worry about that. Yeah. So that's a very romantic question. I don't know how to answer it directly. I think one of my favorite things that I learned from working for Bert was his ability to walk away from a program at the end of it, right? And sort of consistently have the eyes on the next airplane, right? Mm-hmm. I think, especially as men, but probably as engineers or people that own machines, it's easy to get a romantic relationship with an old car or an old motorcycle. Yeah. And then next thing you know, you've owned it for 20 years and you don't maybe... it doesn't excite you like it used to.
Right.
And that was the thing about working for Bert. Like the program would end and I've never seen a man move on to the next program so quickly. And so it's that eyes forward, and then it's also not, it becomes not so much about the airplane so much as about the mission or like a milestone, right? A moment rather than being able to repeat a thing over and over again. Mm-hmm. And that lines up well with the way that I think about flying and flight test, et cetera. Yeah. So that being said, I think about like when Daryl Greenemeier set the F104 record. That's pretty tremendous, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it was, 1,000 miles an hour, whatever, 500 feet off the ground or 200 feet off the ground. That's pretty amazing, and required a legal effort, required a piloting effort. It was like the physics of it were really tough. He had basically couldn't sit in burner for the whole thing. He had to really be judicious about his burner as he worked through the 4 passes required, or otherwise he'd flame out. And then when he came off the last trap, basically he was out of gas. So figuring all that out from an operator standpoint is difficult and interesting. The experience I had doing that with the 3 kilometer was some of the most rewarding flying I've done. So, same thing with setting records. The problem with the 3 kilometer is, I think I was airborne on my last 3 kilometer run for 15 minutes, something like that. It's hard. Humans we only use so much of a frame rate, so you can only process so much in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So speaking of records, I think about Dick Rattan's around the world flight and the amount of life experience that he lived in those 8 days or whatever it was. Yeah. That's a pretty tremendous. Whatever. He spent the rest of his life telling us the story, and every time I see him,
he gets to dine off that all the time.
Well, every time I see him telling it, I'm like, oh, there he goes telling it again. But if I stop and listen for more than a couple minutes, I end up crying at the end of the story, just like every other time, right? It's it's such a magic story, and I think the secret is the amount of exposure as a human. It's like a frame rate problem. Spaceship 1 and 2, the idea of being in effectively a home-built airplane with the crudest of rocket motors. It was a very simple rocket motor with all reversible flight controls with a very simple avionics system. I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff that goes into it. But I think maybe the thing that you're hearing from all this stuff is it's, like I said, it's a milestone. It's multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
And the person that was involved in the seat, the test pilot role, had other dramatic roles with all those programs, right? I mean, you see certain types of programs where a guy can kind of silk scarf it and show up and not have to do a whole lot besides take the hero shot at the end of it. And for me, the more flight tests I do, the more I realize the reward is in building the team to operate really well in the moments that they have to. And usually that's around the actual milestone, but maybe, like today, the chick that figures out how to put that airplane in a box, she's having a really hard time figuring out how to put that thing in a box, and we needed her to be really good today. She didn't have to be good 2 days ago when I was moving the airplane down the country. She needs to be really good today. Anyway, it takes a team of smart people that all know how to do different things, but the right kind of things, and that's been the most rewarding stuff that I've done in aviation. And that is not what you expected me to answer. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
That was a terrible answer. Terrible answer. My apologies.
Yeah, so normally it's Concorde, Spitfire, SR-71.
Yeah.
Those are all pretty standard answers. So, yeah, you've definitely given
the worst, longest answer.
Given the longest answer.
So my favorite airplane, and I'm pretty consistent on this, is the HE-162.
Right.
And I just love the idea, and I'm on the wrong side of the...
I'm going to have to Google that one, I've got to admit.
So I'm on the wrong side of the English Channel to be having this answer, but I love the idea, whatever, you put the politics of the National Socialism and all that aside, but like you have a people that are dramatically under-resourced for engineering resources, right? And at the end of the day, there's a Spitfire on the horizon. What are we going to do about it? And the HE-162 was a plywood airplane with the crudest of turbojets mounted on the back, built for pennies on the Spitfire dollar, right? And yet it could do 460 miles an hour or whatever it was. So there's a Spitfire on the horizon, and we're going to stand up to power and go chase him down. And this. Basically, it's like a long easy, right? With even more so because it's got a home-built motor on it. And that gets me pretty stoked, right? Again, we're talking about engineering, we're talking about building, we're talking about it was a bugger to fly from what I hear.
It's made of plywood and it's got a jet. Like I'm out.
So it's soaking the plywood in kerosene. They had all kinds of problems with fire. Oh, it had a really nasty Dutch roll lateral directional mode where it would depart the lateral axis. That's one that gets me excited. It was a little quicker than the last answer. How'd I do? Is that better?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Well, listen, I've taken up more than enough of your time.
Sorry to ramble at you.
No, not at all. It's been fascinating.
So
we got
much. Just a couple weeks till Reno. Are you going to be at Reno?
I wish I was.
Well, if you find yourself at Reno...
It's on the list. I want to get to Reno and I want to get to Oshkosh. So
well, there's time. They'll sell you a ticket today to get to the US. So you can make
The issue for me as a UK resident at the moment is getting into the USA.
That's actually a very good point.
I think as we see travel restrictions ease over the next 12 months, I guess, then that kind of thing will become more of a possibility.
In the context of your Spitfire point from earlier, the point I was trying to make is if you find yourself at Reno, come by the Sanders Pit. Come check out their 3 Sea Furies, including Dreadnought, who will be there to go after.
I got to say, one of my favourite places on earth is Mojave. So.
Come to Mojave as well.
Next time I'm out there, I'm going to be knocking on the door.
Yeah, we'll find an airplane and we'll go upside down.
I'll be like, it's that English guy again, man.
No problem. Thanks. I really appreciate the effort.
Yeah,
it's a very warm welcome from everybody.
So I guess you're travelling back to the USA tomorrow?
I just bought my ticket moments before I saw you. I got my 2 booger sticks for my COVID test this morning.
Lucky you.
And I haven't got the results yet, but hopefully I'm clean because I spent all the money on a plane ticket.
Wow.
We'll go home.
So
I'm hoping
back to LAX? Or?
Yeah, I'm hoping to take the boys camping in the airplane this weekend.
Fantastic.
So I'm pretty excited about it. I've been having dreams about it. So.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, you must really miss them.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Cool. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
And special thanks to Nik Codling for putting that together for us. And he done a really good job, I will say.
Really good interview, wasn't it? Yeah. Actually, I was really... Yeah, and if any other listeners would like to sort of essentially...
Feel free.
sort of grab some poor guy trying to get on an aeroplane, then do feel free. But I mean, that was a great interview, wasn't it, Nev?
Superb. Yeah, thanks, Nick, for doing that. It was very informative and highly entertaining too, I thought.
Yeah,
well
absolutely.
done. Well done, Nick.
Yeah.
Lots of love in the chat room as well, just before we move on for that, Nick, as well, from the guys in the chat room.
Yeah,
so well
brilliant.
done.
Yeah, can't wait for the next one.
yeah, next one, hopefully.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you want to follow in Nick's footsteps in sending us in some feedback, you can do. And the following links are what you need. So Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, search for us on Plane Talking UK on there. If you want to send us some audio feedback or a message or picture to go on the green screen behind us here in the studio, +44 757 2249166 is the number to send those to. If you want to send us an email, you can, podcast@planetalkinguk.com, and also check out our website, allthews.planetalkinguk.com is where to find our website, where you can find out more about us here as a team, and also find our shop on there where you can get yourself one of our glorious PTUK t-shirts, and you can also buy yourself one of our amazing PTUK mugs, which you can drink anything out of, including whiskey. But we don't condone drinking on this show either. But anyway, you can also find a link to Amazon on the website as well.
Have we changed to a different show?
I know, it's the drinking show. You can find a link on there to Amazon as well. Click on there to do your shopping. Won't cost you a penny, but it does give us a small referral fee, and also it's just good. It's good, all good. And you can also find the links on our website to Patreon if you want to become a patron of the show. And a big thanks to all our patrons again this month. You can find the links on there, as well as the PayPal link as well if you want to make a one-time donation. We would very much thank you for that as well. So that is about all we have got time for this week. It's been a massively packed show. A massive thanks to Nev again for all his hard work with the interviews that he's been doing for this show, as well as Nick as well for that one we just show on the show this week. And a big thanks to Matt for pressing all the buttons and everything this week. A big thanks to Armando for his awesome contribution to the show with the military this week, and not forgetting as well a big thanks to John for all his hard work this week in the background doing all the pre-production show work. So that's it, everyone. We are going to let you all get away now, back to your busy lives this weekend. So stay safe. Thanks for listening to episode 386, and make sure you join us next Friday for another thrilling show. So from me, Carlos, here in the studio, from Matt, sitting next to me here, and from Nev, good old Nev, we'll leave, we'll say the last word to you, Nev.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed for joining us tonight. Great fun and superb interview content. Thanks again to Nick for teeing that up. Hope you have a great weekend, everybody, and a great week ahead. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.